Most people are done working by noon, not because their tasks are complete, not because they've reached their goals, but because they've reached their limit, their mental limit, their comfort limit, their pain threshold. Look around. The masses start strong but fade by midday. They check out mentally even if their bodies stay at their desks. This isn't about a 9-to-5 job. This is about a mindset that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. The truth? Success lives in those extra hours. The hours when weak men have already surrendered to comfort, when they've already told themselves, that's enough for today. But strong men? They're just getting started. In this video, you'll discover the real reason some people achieve 10 times more than others. You'll learn the psychology behind pushing past mental barriers that stop most people. You'll understand how the compound effect of extra hours creates exponential results that others can only dream of. This isn't about working yourself to death. It's about extending your limits when others won't, about finding strength when others find excuses. By the end, you'll know exactly how to develop the midnight mindset that separates those who wish from those who achieve. The difference between strong and weak isn't physical, it's psychological, and it shows up when the clock strikes noon. Every human brain comes with a built-in saboteur. Evolution designed us to conserve energy and avoid pain at all costs. This ancient wiring served our ancestors well when survival meant not wasting precious calories. But in today's world, it's the invisible chain holding millions in mediocrity. Mediocrity isn't born from lack of talent. It grows from the fertile soil of comfort. Day after day, people wake up with grand ambitions only to retreat back to familiar territory when discomfort arrives. It happens so subtly, most never notice the pattern forming. Comfort zones don't announce themselves with warning signs. They seduce gradually with warm promises of ease and safety. Soon enough, what was once a temporary resting place becomes a permanent residence. Progress dies a quiet death within these invisible walls. Most troubling is how this trap disguises itself as rationality. I'll push harder tomorrow. Now isn't the right time. I've done enough for today. These seemingly reasonable thoughts are actually sophisticated excuses manufactured by a brain desperate to return to homeostasis. Noon becomes the psychological tipping point. Morning motivation fades as energy dips. Challenges that seemed conquerable at dawn now loom larger. This is precisely when the divide occurs, when average people accept good enough while exceptional individuals push through the resistance. Society reinforces this trap constantly. Social media celebrates quick wins while hiding the grueling hours behind achievement. Friends and family unconsciously encourage you to settle, not from malice, but from their own comfort-seeking programming. Don't work too hard becomes the anthem of the mediocre. Biologically, this comfort-seeking is tied to dopamine patterns. Early quitters grow addicted to small, immediate rewards rather than delayed gratification. Their reward pathways become rewired to chase the quick hit rather than the sustained effort, leading to massive payoffs. Breaking free requires recognizing that discomfort isn't your enemy. It's the only reliable signal of growth. Pain, boredom, frustration, uncertainty aren't warning signs to retreat. They're indicators you're expanding beyond previous limitations. Counterintuitively, those who embrace discomfort ultimately find deeper satisfaction. Their capacity for achievement expands, while noon quitters remain trapped in shrinking circles of possibility. Strong men don't enjoy pain more. They simply understand its purpose in the success equation. Noon quitters follow a predictable pattern every single day. Morning arrives with enthusiasm and promises. They attack their goals with temporary passion, convinced today will be different. 2 hours in, motivation begins to wane. By noon, excuses materialize like clockwork. I need a break. I'll finish this tomorrow. I've made good progress already. These aren't occasional thoughts. They form a lifestyle of mediocrity. Behind each premature surrender lies a fundamental weakness, not of body, but of mind. Physical fatigue rarely causes noon quitting. Mental fatigue does. When focus becomes difficult, when problems demand deeper thought, when solutions aren't immediately apparent, that's when weak minds search for exits. Fear drives many to abandon their posts by midday. Fear of failure if they continue into uncertain territory. Fear of discovering their limitations. Fear of the discomfort that accompanies genuine growth. These fears masquerade as rational thought, creating elaborate justifications for stopping short. Look closely at chronic noon quitters, and you'll notice they're masters of self-deception. They convince themselves they're working hard while secretly knowing they're operating at half capacity. They celebrate minimal effort as maximum performance. They compare themselves to those doing even less rather than those achieving exponentially more. Instant gratification addiction forms another cornerstone of the noon quitter's psychology. Their decision-making revolves around immediate relief rather than delayed achievement. Each time they choose comfort over challenge, this neural pathway strengthens. Eventually, quitting becomes automatic, their default response to any resistance. Society has normalized this behavior through lowered standards. Self-care gets conflated with avoidance. Work-life balance becomes code for mediocre effort. These concepts, though valuable in proper context, become weapons in the noon quitter's arsenal of excuses. Most tragic is how noon quitters gradually shrink their self-image to match their behavior. Initially, early surrender feels uncomfortable, even shameful. But humans cannot tolerate cognitive dissonance long-term. Eventually, they don't just quit early, they begin to believe that's all they're capable of. Their identity transforms to justify their limitations. Weak men internalize external obstacles as permanent barriers. Traffic, interruptions, technology failures, these become insurmountable catastrophes rather than normal challenges to overcome. Each obstacle becomes another reason to call it quits, another justification for surrender. Noon quitters crave recognition without earning it. They want rewards without completing the journey. This entitlement mentality creates perpetual frustration as reality repeatedly denies them the outcomes reserved for those willing to push beyond conventional stopping points. Midnight warriors operate with fundamentally different mental software. Where noon quitters see obstacles, they see opportunities for growth. When fatigue signals others to stop, they recognize it as the starting line of real progress. This isn't mere motivational rhetoric. It's observable reality in the lives of extraordinary achievers across every field. History's greatest innovations weren't created during comfortable 9 to -5 hours. They emerged during extended periods when others had long abandoned their posts. Edison's light bulb came after thousands of failed attempts that would have satisfied any reasonable stopping point. Tesla regularly worked 20-hour days when pursuing breakthrough ideas. Modern examples abound, from tech founders coding through darkness to athletes training when facilities empty. Discipline for midnight warriors isn't about punishment. It's about freedom. Counterintuitively, those who impose stricter demands on themselves experience greater liberation than those who surrender to momentary impulses. Their self-imposed standards create expanded possibilities rather than limitations. Pain responses separate average performers from exceptional ones. Brain scans reveal elite performers process discomfort differently. While noon quitters interpret fatigue as a signal to stop, midnight warriors interpret identical sensations as confirmation they're on the correct path. This neurological difference doesn't come pre-installed. It develops through consistent choice. Results compound dramatically during those extended hours. Productivity after traditional quitting time multiplies for several reasons. External interruptions vanish. Mental clarity increases once initial fatigue passes into second wind territory. Competition disappears as average performers retreat. Problems that seemed insurmountable at noon often surrender their solutions during quiet midnight reflection. Midnight warriors aren't superhuman. They simply understand human limitation differently. They recognize most barriers are artificial constructs rather than absolute thresholds. Fatigue becomes a data point rather than a stop sign. Boredom becomes a challenge to overcome rather than a reason to quit. Difficulty becomes the necessary ingredient for meaningful achievement rather than an obstacle to avoid. Crucially, midnight warriors love what most fear: negative feedback and failure. While noon quitters seek validation, midnight warriors actively pursue criticism that exposes weaknesses. While noon quitters avoid situations where failure is possible, midnight warriors deliberately enter challenging domains where initial failure is guaranteed but mastery awaits beyond. Personal responsibility defines midnight mentality. No blaming circumstances, luck, or others. Results or lack thereof rest squarely on their shoulders. This ownership mentality creates immediate agency where noon quitters feel helpless. When something isn't working, midnight warriors adjust their approach rather than abandoning their goals. Successful midnight warriors cultivate important psychological anchors. Their identity connects to process rather than outcomes. Their motivations linked to internal standards rather than external validation. Their satisfaction derives from effort invested rather than rewards received. These mental foundations prevent the crumbling that occurs when noon quitters face inevitable setbacks. Mathematics of success reveals a stunning truth about extended effort. Working 10% longer doesn't yield 10% more results. It often produces 50%, 100%, or even 1,000% greater outcomes. This exponential return occurs through multiple compounding mechanisms that remain invisible to those who never push past conventional limits. First comes the power of accumulated knowledge during extended hours. Each additional hour spent mastering a skill or solving a problem builds upon previous work. Connections form between disparate ideas. Solutions emerge from combining seemingly unrelated concepts. This mental synthesis rarely happens during standard hours when the brain operates in familiar patterns. Second arrives the elimination of restart friction. Every time work stops, momentum dies. Picking up where you left off never equals continuing uninterrupted. Studies show task resumption after interruption requires 23 minutes to regain full concentration. Those who extend their working periods avoid dozens of these costly restarts, effectively adding hundreds of productive hours annually. Third emerges the competitive advantage gap. While most people quit, a select few continue. This creates exponentially increasing separation. If you work until 6 p.m. while competitors stop at 5 p.m., that's 20% more daily effort. Compounded over months and years, this small daily edge transforms into insurmountable leads. Add midnight to the equation, and the gap becomes unbridgeable. Fourth manifests the breakthrough threshold. Most significant advances happen after sustained effort breaks through conventional barriers. The brain requires extended focus to reach deeper problem-solving states. Solutions rarely arrive during convenient hours. They emerge after pushing through multiple failure points when others would have surrendered. Fifth, develops specialized neural adaptations. Extended effort forces the brain to create new pathways and connections. Midnight warriors literally develop different neural architecture than noon quitters. Their brains physically adapt to sustained focus, making future extended efforts progressively easier, while noon quitters find them increasingly difficult. Sixth unfolds the identity transformation. Working beyond normal limits gradually alters self-perception. Actions shape identity more powerfully than intentions. Those consistently pushing boundaries begin seeing themselves as exceptional rather than average. This identity shift creates a self-reinforcing cycle, where extraordinary effort becomes the natural expression of who they are, rather than something they occasionally do. Seventh materializes the cumulative knowledge advantage. Extra hours spent learning compound dramatically over time. Reading 1 extra hour daily accumulates to 365 hours annually, equivalent to earning 10 college credits each year. Within a decade, this habit creates expertise equivalent to multiple advanced degrees while others remain stagnant. Eighth surfaces opportunity asymmetry. Disproportionate rewards cluster around those willing to endure what others won't. Markets naturally compensate individuals who solve problems others avoid. Putting in midnight hours doesn't just add incremental value. It positions you for entirely different categories of opportunity invisible to conventional participants. Mental barriers exist primarily as illusions. Powerful ones, but illusions nonetheless. Breaking through requires first recognizing their nature. When exhaustion hits, when motivation wanes, when the clock shows noon and every instinct screams to stop, this moment contains the opportunity most never sees. Physiological research demonstrates that perceived limits typically occur at roughly 40% of actual physical capacity. Mental surrender precedes physical necessity by substantial margins. Reframing discomfort transforms the experience entirely. Noon quitters interpret fatigue as damage, something harmful to avoid. Midnight warriors interpret identical sensations as adaptation, the necessary stimulus for growth. This perspective shift doesn't eliminate the discomfort, but it fundamentally alters its meaning. Pain becomes data rather than danger. Neuroplasticity research reveals how barrier breaking physically reshapes brain structure. Each time you push beyond perceived limits, dendrite growth accelerates, creating new neural pathways that make future persistence easier. Conversely, each surrender reinforces quitting pathways. Every decision literally carves biological grooves, making similar future decisions more automatic. Implementation intentions demolish vague commitment. Weak minds say, "I'll try to work longer." Strong minds predetermine exactly what actions will occur when specific barriers arise. When I feel like quitting at noon, I will immediately do X. This pre-decision removes the negotiation phase where most surrender occurs. The battle happens once during planning, rather than daily during execution. Psychological momentum generates increasing returns on sustained effort. Initial work often feels difficult as resistance remains high. Around the 2-hour mark, most experience intensifying desire to quit. Push 30 minutes beyond this threshold and something remarkable occurs. The flywheel effect kicks in. Mental friction decreases as deep focus states emerge. Work that required immense willpower becomes almost self-sustaining. Identity-based commitments outlast motivation-based efforts. Noon quitters rely on feeling motivated, a notoriously unreliable foundation. Midnight warriors anchor behavior to identity. This is who I am, rather than this is what I feel like doing. When midnight approaches and fatigue mounts, identity becomes the immovable foundation where motivation would have crumbled hours earlier. Progressive overload applies to mental toughness, just as it does to physical strength. Starting with unrealistic midnight goals guarantees failure. Systematically extending working capacity builds sustainable results. Moving from noon to 1 p.m. for 2 weeks, then to 2 p.m., then 3 p.m. creates durable capacity, increases without burnout. Consistency trumps occasional heroic efforts. Cognitive reappraisal techniques directly combat quitting thoughts. When internal voices say, "You've done enough," or "You deserve a break," midnight warriors immediately counter with alternative perspectives. They actively dispute limiting thoughts rather than passively accepting them as truth. This internal dialogue determines whether barriers become walls or merely hurdles. Social environment powerfully impacts mental barriers. Surrounding yourself with noon quitters virtually guarantees similar behavior through unconscious mimicry. Proximity to midnight warriors creates upward pressure through the same mechanism. Deliberate environment design, choosing who you spend time with, what media you consume, what conversations you engage in, shapes barrier perception more than willpower ever could. Midnight mindset begins with brutal self-honesty. Most people lie to themselves daily about their efforts, convincing themselves they're working hard when operating at half capacity. Midnight warriors establish objective measurement systems that make self-deception impossible. Tracking actual productive hours, setting clear daily targets, and evaluating results against predetermined standards creates accountability no excuses can penetrate. Deliberately seeking discomfort rewires neural pathways that normally avoid pain. Cold showers, difficult conversations, physical training beyond comfortable limits. These daily practices strengthen the discomfort muscle that noon quitters lack. Each voluntary hardship builds tolerance for the inevitable difficulties that arise during extended work periods. Small daily victories over comfort-seeking tendencies accumulate into formidable mental toughness. Focus management becomes essential for sustained productivity. Attention fractures easily after extended periods, making distractions increasingly tempting. Successful midnight warriors implement ruthless distraction elimination protocols. Phones disappear, notifications cease, entertainment temptations remain inaccessible. Creating environments where focus represents the path of least resistance makes extended work periods substantially easier. Recovery rituals paradoxically enable greater work capacity. Weak minds confuse relaxation with laziness, either working themselves to complete burnout or using recovery as an excuse for perpetual avoidance. Strong minds strategically incorporate intense recovery periods that enhance subsequent performance. Proper sleep optimization, nutrition timing, and strategic breaks don't detract from work capacity. They multiply it. Purpose alignment generates sustainable energy beyond what motivation provides. When tasks connect directly to meaningful outcomes, willpower requirements diminish dramatically. Midnight warriors consistently revisit their fundamental why, especially during difficult periods. While noon quitters require enjoyment to continue, those with midnight mindset access deeper wells of purpose-driven energy that transcend momentary feelings. Environmental design eliminates decision fatigue that depletes mental reserves. Strategic meal preparation prevents energy crashes. Workspace optimization removes friction from essential tasks. Schedule structures prevent willpower depletion on routine decisions. These systems create conditions where extended work becomes the default path rather than requiring constant conscious choice. Progress celebration protocols sustain long-term effort. Midnight warriors systematically acknowledge milestones without using them as excuses to quit. They implement reward systems that reinforce continued work rather than premature cessation. While noon quitters use small wins as reasons to stop, those with midnight mindset use identical achievements as fuel to push further. Relationship audits identify and eliminate momentum vampires. Certain individuals consistently drain energy through negativity, distraction, or encouragement of mediocrity. Midnight warriors proactively prune these influences while cultivating connections with similarly committed individuals. This social ecosystem maintenance often determines whether extended effort feels like swimming against the current or with it. Failure reframing transforms potentially discouraging experiences into motivation. When noon arrives and progress seems insufficient, weak minds interpret this as evidence their approach isn't working. Strong minds see identical situations as feedback indicating adjustments needed. They extract learning value from every setback, incorporating these insights into improved strategies rather than using difficulties as surrender justification. Strategic thinking separates genuine achievement from exhausting motion. Midnight warriors don't simply work longer, they work deeper, focusing efforts where maximum impact occurs. This precision targeting multiplies results beyond what mere hours could produce. While noon quitters scatter limited energy across numerous tasks, midnight warriors concentrate force at critical leverage points where breakthroughs create cascading advantages. Consistency demolishes intensity every time. Working until midnight once impresses no one. Working until 7 p.m. every single day for 5 years reshapes industries. Biological adaptation requires regular stimulus. The body and mind respond to patterns, not isolated events. Midnight warriors build systems ensuring daily extended effort regardless of motivation, mood, or circumstances. This reliability creates compound growth impossible through sporadic, heroic pushes. Strategic recovery prevents the burnout trap ensnaring many who extend working hours. Noon quitters falsely believe their early surrender prevents exhaustion. Ironically, their inconsistency creates greater fatigue than those working longer hours with proper recovery protocols. Midnight warriors implement deliberate downtime, not as escape, but as performance enhancement. Deep sleep optimization, nutritional periodization, and strategic deload weeks maintain sustainable output levels that would crush those lacking recovery science. Opportunity costs dominate decision frameworks for midnight warriors. Every hour contains infinite possible uses. Selecting activities with highest long-term returns requires brutal prioritization. While noon quitters chase urgent but ultimately insignificant tasks, midnight warriors ruthlessly eliminate low-leverage activities regardless of immediate payoff. This opportunity cost analysis often means saying no to good options to preserve capacity for exceptional ones. Skill stack development creates exponential advantage impossible through linear improvement. Midnight warriors recognize that combining multiple skills at 80% mastery creates more value than singular skills at 100%. These additional hours build complementary capabilities that synergize rather than merely extending existing strengths. A programmer who adds design skills, a salesperson who masters analytics, a writer who learns marketing. These combinations command premium market positions unreachable through conventional specialization. Inflection point awareness guides, strategic resource allocation. Progress rarely follows linear patterns. Most meaningful advances cluster around critical thresholds where breakthrough performance emerges. Midnight warriors study these inflection points, concentrating effort precisely when additional hours yield maximum return. This timing sensitivity, Knowing when to push beyond normal limits often determines whether extended effort produces transformative results or merely incremental improvements. Deep work capacity development creates insurmountable competitive advantages. Noon quitters perform exclusively shallow work, easily replicated, low-complexity tasks. Midnight warriors progressively build capacity for extended deep work sessions where highest value creation happens. The ability to maintain focused concentration for 4, 6, or 8 hours on single complex problems represents a superpower in distraction-dominated environments where most struggle maintaining focus for 30 minutes. Market positioning awareness guides strategic work extension. Certain fields reward additional effort exponentially, while others provide merely linear returns. Midnight warriors gravitate toward domains where extra hours create winner-take-all dynamics. Creative fields, entrepreneurship, research, specialized expertise. They avoid hourly compensation structures where additional effort produces proportional rewards, focusing instead where disproportionate outcomes await those willing to invest what others won't. Delayed gratification tolerance underlies every aspect of strategic execution. Noon quitters require immediate feedback, constantly seeking validation and visible progress. Midnight warriors comfortably operate in extended feedback voids, maintaining faith in processes whose results may remain invisible for months or years. This capacity to sustain effort without constant reinforcement often separates those who create lasting impact from those who achieve only what immediate rewards can motivate. Success isn't measured by morning enthusiasm. It's forged in the crucible of extended effort when others have long abandoned their posts. The division between those who surrender at noon and those who persist until midnight creates life trajectories so divergent they might as well exist in parallel universes. Every extraordinary achievement throughout history emerged from this fundamental truth. Greatness lives beyond conventional stopping points. The light bulb, life-saving medical treatments, revolutionary technologies, transformative art, none came from comfortable hours. All required pushing beyond when reasonable people would have quit. What separates these worlds isn't talent, luck, or circumstances. It's the willingness to endure necessary discomfort when others retreat. This mental fortitude isn't innate. It's cultivated through deliberate choices repeated until they become identity. Every time you push past that initial resistance, every time you continue when fatigue whispers to stop, you're not just completing additional work, you're literally rewiring your brain's response to challenge. The most dangerous illusion in modern society is the belief that comfort leads to happiness. Momentary pleasure, certainly. But lasting fulfillment? Never. Psychological research consistently demonstrates that meaningful achievement, not comfort, creates sustainable well-being. The Midnight Warriors don't sacrifice happiness by embracing discomfort. They access deeper fulfillment unavailable to those who retreat at the first sign of difficulty. Implementation matters more than information. Reading about midnight mindset means nothing without application. Start where you are. If noon currently marks your surrender point, extend to 1 p.m. Hold that line for 2 weeks. Then push to 2 p.m. Progressive challenge expansion builds sustainable capacity without burnout. Small, consistent extensions compound into extraordinary results over time. Most critically, remember that midnight doesn't literally mean working until exhaustion. It represents extending beyond your current comfort threshold, whatever that may be. For some, 6 p.m. represents their midnight challenge. For others, actual midnight might be appropriate. The principle transcends specific hours. It's about consistently pushing boundaries when others accept limitations. Society celebrates overnight success while ignoring the extended midnight hours that created it. Don't be fooled by highlight reels. Behind every extraordinary achievement lies hundreds or thousands of extended days when continuing seemed pointless, when progress appeared non-existent, when every instinct screamed to quit. Those who persisted through these invisible hours eventually reached tipping points where previously impossible results suddenly materialized. The choice between noon and midnight mindset happens daily. Each decision seems insignificant in isolation. Yet these micro-choices accumulate into destiny. Will you accept the temporary discomfort of extended effort, or surrender to the permanent discomfort of untapped potential? Will you join the midnight warriors who reshape industries through relentless persistence? Or remain among noon quitters who spend lifetimes wondering why success eludes them? The answer will determine everything that follows. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to hit the like button right now. This simple action helps more people discover these principles and build their own midnight mindset. And if you're committed to pushing beyond your current limits, subscribe to our channel for more strategies that separate extraordinary achievers from the mediocre majority. New videos every week designed specifically to help you break through the mental barriers holding you back. Join our community of midnight warriors who refuse to settle for average when exceptional remains within reach. Remember, the gap between who you are and who you could be exists in those extra hours. Will you claim them?